Okay, let's call this meeting to order at 4:33.
I will write the charter.
Considerations of any changes, additions, or removal to the agenda? Yes.
We have one. We would like to update you on the FEMA projects. We've got some new information about a pretty substantial payment.
So
Where do we want to put
want to put that
Wherever
in?
you want. Oh, really?
If you're gonna vote on it, you can't vote on it under other business.
I don't
It's
think
no
there's,
voting, it's just
Okay.
information.
I don't think there's any voting on this, but.
No, we'll just keep it as a 12-day.
Between
Okay.
the two of you, we are not gonna break any records. Yeah, no, I don't think the vote's required, it's informational for you all.
It may be somewhere between 8 and 9, the M&T stock.
It actually,
Yeah, that's
you know
helpful.
what, it actually may help to have this information before we talk about the budgets.
So do we want to put it in as 8?
Or 5.
Or five,
Five?
yeah.
A new number 6.
5,
Yeah.
or new number
5A.
6, yeah. 5A, B, C, yeah.
Do we need a motion on that, or is it just a no
Yes,
objection
please.
thing?
Yes.
I'll move
You're changing the
to add a
agendas.
new item 6 for FEMA updates, FEMA project updates.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move FEMA to number 6. Any other changes or removals to the agenda? All right, comments from ratepayers. And approval of minutes. It doesn't have the date on it.
Well, here's the deal. We
Let's see.
are prepared, but we've got several sets of minutes here that have not been approved for it. 10-3, circulate this around. 10-24, special meeting. 12-19 meeting that we did before Christmas. And last, 2 weeks ago, the special meeting, the 1/16 meeting. These are all here circulating around, but you would need to, you need to approve each one or make changes. And if you do make changes, I'll reprint these. We have beautiful paper and beautiful printing for these to go in the big book, but they should be right. So whatever changes you all feel are necessary, we can accommodate.
Any changes? I'll move to approve the minutes as presented for 10-3, 10-24, 12-19, and 1/16.
Was it 12-19 or 18?
Yep.
12-19, 1/16.
Couldn't have done it better myself, thank you.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, move. The minutes are approved.
All right, then if you guys can circulate that around for your signatures
Yep.
on the last page, that
Yep.
would be great, thank you.
Certainly. All right, so let's move on to number 5, update on truck financing options.
Thank you. You know, on the one hand, we have the money to buy the truck outright. On the other hand, we're being asked by PUC to have more debt on our books.
Right.
Like, okay, then give us a credit card with a, you know, some sort of like $500,000 limit. We'll be happy to borrow more money. Yeah, so the reality here is we've been checking on the financing. We did get a really good bid from Bellows Falls, the Ford dealer there. They don't call Bellows Falls. Claremont, sorry, across the river. Claremont Ford.
Not exactly.
Yeah, oh, not exactly, a little bit skewed, that's true. I was just using some geographical opportunity there. It's actually a very good price and we did do the bid and we have that documented for all of you, but in terms of financing, M&T Bank, the bank we mostly deal with, gave us a 6.9, no, 7.
6.9.
6.9. And
They were higher than that the first
They
time.
were higher than that the first time, and I asked, I wanted to present that because I said, I think my predecessor pretty much got fired because I did 8% loan from you guys. So it was like 7.5 or something the first time. I said, no. They asked what I really wanted. I said, 3 to 4%, I think sounds reasonable. They then went back and came back with the 6.9. And then the dealer, Brett has been dealing with the dealer, but they don't seem to finance any commercial things. We're working on something that we wanted to do anyway, and Brett brought it to our attention. It's basically would work like a line of credit. And I think we need one of those for cash flow purposes, and it's something I was going to recommend to you. And it's through the Vermont
Vermont.
Secretary of State.
Secretary.
Secretary of the Treasury.
Right, Secretary of the Treasury, sorry.
That's that municipal
Treasury.
discount
Municipal equipment loan.
Yeah.
that they'll do what, 3.2 or?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like a revolving credit, and they do it like every 6 months you have to apply for it. And the light department did it years ago. They used to just automatically do it every 6 months. They'd get it and they'd pay stuff down as they went, and then they just renew and keep doing that.
We think we should do something like that, and it will serve as a secondary desire, is to have some cash flow flexibility with a line of credit.
I mean, it's limited to
It's 150,000?
150,000.
Yeah, which is still fine. It's okay, that's helpful. So I would offer that we suggest that we go forward with the truck financing through that process, or if that falls through, then to just pay it outright. But I would like to borrow, I would like us to finance the money for Brett's truck.
Will that be enough to like show a difference with the PSD here?
Well, between that and the other things we're doing, I think so. I mean, what we did last month, and I think we talked to you about this before, I hope we did, was we did not renew a $540,000 CD that was coming due a week or so ago. And the purpose of that was to be able to finance our payback of the sick leave for the other employees, the union stuff, but also to then put us in a position to have funds to be able to manage current funds work. So without going into too much detail on that, other than that the money, $540,000 disappeared for 5 days, we found it and we got it back. So I think we're okay.
You notice the pens up there.
I do. I really appreciate your wisdom. Okay, so I think the answer is that we try and apply for this municipal loan, have it as a set loan figure. If it's reasonable, and by reasonable I mean like 3 to 4%. If it's more than that, I'll bring it back to you. I think the goal is to establish something that we can use on a regular basis, so.
And this is something we have to apply for, or?
It is, it's.
Every few months?
Every 6.
There is an application. Once we did the first one, I think the others will go pretty well, but.
Yeah.
It's not a big application.
No, it's the
No,
one that I
but-
gave to Tom, right? Before he, I think
Maybe.
so, yeah.
But somebody, Michael, needs to remind me every 6 months that we need to review this.
Yeah, and we have, when we did apply last time, they asked for our financials. And I gave them our financials from the end of '23 and they never got back to me. So
Okay. Maybe
yay
they-
or nay, they just didn't get
Yep,
back to me.
yep.
So we can try it again, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
think that sounds reasonable. Anything else?
Yeah,
on-
if for some reason they don't get back to you at all, let us, I mean, we'll reach out.
Yeah, we can
We'll follow up.
poke some people.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean,
I have
Somebody
some
might have
names.
some pull here.
it is an
I know the
interesting
treasurer
technique to
pretty well.
just kind of like, shadow people until they leave you alone again, but that's not my, I tend to bother people again and again. Answer the call.
All right. Anything else on that financing options?
No, I don't think so. I think the truck is still 6 to 8 weeks away from
Okay,
being.
so we have a little time to.
Yeah, we're scheduling kind of the wrapping from same people that made our signs. And by then, figure out how we're paying for
Okay. All right, let's move on to FEMA discussions.
Yeah, that's gonna be me.
it. Yep.
We have 3 projects with FEMA. One of them has been completed. It was our actual work we did right after the flooding. We originally got $57,000 from FEMA for that. Vermont has gone up to a 90% reimbursement from FEMA for that disaster. So we're getting an extra $10,000 related to that first project. And then the second project we're getting reimbursement for is for the new 103 line project. Our total cost for that project was $497,000. FEMA's allowing us $447,000. They're withholding 10% based upon our completion of the pole removals for the old line. So we're gonna get $403,000. And I just filled out the ACH information, so we should have that payment soon. And that's, once we complete the pole removals for the old line, we can submit all those costs, and we'll get 90% of those costs reimbursed up to $47,000.
What's the projected time on pole removal?
Sometime midsummer, as soon as we'll be able to get in there. Wait for
Yeah.
communication to get off.
Right, I was gonna say, truthfully, this is gonna be more driven by communication. We can only beat them up so much to take their lines off and relocate them. But that's usually the holdup, to be fair about it. And so, I think Brett asked, desiring that this happen midsummer is based on the assumption that those guys are right there, and they're not usually, so. I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now you were having this conversation and the FEMA money, that portion of the FEMA money was still held up. It takes a long time to get the communications people to take their stuff off the poles. We want to remove the poles because we're getting money for it. There's not much more to say, except for that usually the last person on the pole pulls the pole. But because of the FEMA reimbursement, we're trying to coordinate that and do that.
And when you say communication, is that the TDS? Or-
Yeah, it's all the
TDS,
TDS.
VTEL, Comcast,
I don't think level 3 is on those poles.
level 3 is on
No,
there.
anybody who is providing a communication service is in that lower tier. And they got the same work that we have. They have to move the lines to the new pole. It can be, well, it's very expensive. And if you feel like your customers don't need it, they cannot do it. I mean, they have to do it, but it's hard to enforce. That's all I'm saying.
Is there one that's worse than that? You almost
Oh, yeah.
you assume it's
but you
usually
don't have-
the
you
bigger
don't-
company. But,
Yeah, but you don't have them here. Lucky
Oh,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, no, the worst is what used to be Fairpoint and is now consolidated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd imagine
They're
that
better.
TDS
They're
and
better
VTEL
than
are
they
better
were
than others.
for Fairpoint, but
Yeah.
Fairpoint was definitely the worst.
Fair enough.
Good news.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there another one, Michael? You said 3 projects.
The third project is replacement of transformers at the mill. That one is waiting on hazard mitigation to finalize their reports. Everything that we need to do has been submitted to FEMA, and we'll probably get about $45,000 from that one if they approve it.
Okay. Is that all you had for this?
Yep,
for the
that's all I
FEMA?
have for the FEMA.
Okay. Let's move on to number 7, 2025-2029 capital budget.
This is basically in your court to decide if you had any further questions that either Brett, Michael, or I can answer. As I say and said, you know, the 2025 thing is a lot more sure than the 2029 thing. And each year as we go through this and create a 5-year budget, those things will become clearer or refined or eliminated, so.
I'm forgetting, I didn't look back after I read the technology report, but I was just noticing in the technology report that it talks a lot about the, obviously it talks about the implementation of MI, but it also talks about the future implementation of the SCADA.
Yes, yeah.
And I was just wondering if we had put that.
We are planning for that. So the SCADA stuff, we know we have to do. Michael, is that included in the budget, or?
I believe there is some
I think
line
so.
items.
I didn't look back.
Yeah, no, it's hard to see that
level
level of detail to the project level, but we definitely knew that SCADA was one of the things that we need to replace and upgrade, and that's gonna happen in our office at a chemo, Magris?
Yeah.
Magris as well, with ideally good fiber optic connections between the 3 of those. So that's the goal.
Yeah, and we're kind of in the process of that with the Velcro project. Velcro's going to run a bunch of fiber, and it'll be dedicated line fiber to.
So obviously I don't fully understand all of this technology, but what I was reading about the SCADA, it sounds like it would really be really important with the battery system,
Yeah.
and
for
then
your
the
peak load, so
SCADA,
it can control your peak load.
and then we can get really fancy with how we're buying and selling power.
Buying and selling.
Yeah.
That, the solar project, and
And the solar.
starting with
Yeah.
solar.
No, it's going to be really important, and what it does is basically tell you what the current usage of the demand is of that power
Yeah.
for that particular
In that,
customer.
yeah.
And we got the big customers on there, and we can see whether they're going to exceed our ability to provide power, or whether, And then, as Brett was just saying with the battery project, the goal is to shave those peaks. So if you saw like today, 4 below 0, temperature is really low, people are either making snow, they've got to do stuff, and you've got a peak there, that might be an ideal time to take the battery power that's in there and put it into the grid and not buy power that's several $100s a kilowatt hour as opposed to the other stuff. So I think that, by the way, the battery people would love to come in and talk to you next month. I've kind of been looking forward to see that project.
I have a question regarding how much power we get from Canada, and should we talk about or have a plan for if a substantial tariff goes into effect? I mean, I think we at least need to talk about it.
Unfortunately, I think we do need to do that. It's kind of
Controlled by that.
it will be negotiated by NEPSA, but the reality is they're not going to be able to do anything if Hydro-Quebec gets hit with a 25% tariff.
I understand that. I just feel like it's
25%.
something
But
we
it is
should.
something you definitely need to look at, because that is a decent
think so.
portion of your power source. Also,
How much, just a
I can't
ballpark, how
remember the
much
slide,
do
but
we
I think
buy?
it's like 8 to 10%, something like that. I don't remember. But it's a portion of the wedge. It's pretty, I think we had the Niagara, the New York Hydro, this hydro, and a couple of one other hydro, and together they were all like about 18%, but they're separated.
So should we try to build that into our budget as a contingency?
Yeah, we should, I think, in
Just
light
a
of what's happening.
Worst case scenario?
Right, if we don't have to spend it,
Yeah.
And we should look
don't.
at the commitments that we have for equipment too, because Brett, do you have any Caterpillar equipment? Because those usually come from Canada. Do you got a backhoe? You got a backhoe.
Generators, yeah.
Yeah, so if we, look, just for general discussion, we gotta look at both of those. We gotta look
Okay.
at the electricity coming over the border, and we gotta look at equipment that we might be buying that we thought was gonna be X, and now it's X plus something, right?
hopefully it won't happen, but it's a conversation we should have.
Yes.
Yeah, I think thanks for bringing that up. It's good the budget for it.
Because we have a contract with Hydro-Quebec, or PEPSA has a contract, whether this
I know.
tariff will affect, it's a discussion that needs to happen.
Yes, it is, and I'm sure the president will be having that discussion with the Prime Minister of Canada, but I don't think we're ever going to get into that. I don't think they have any care whatsoever.
You don't think they're going to want to come to one of our meetings? Come on.
But anyway, Michael, you're absolutely right. And as soon as I hear from the president, I will let you know what the decision is.
I'm gonna call you first.
Okay. That,
You guys are tired, right?
the only other, and we talked a little bit about this last time, was in terms of the budget and personnel, new employees. I remember, I know there's at least one. I think we should consider what that might look like,
Yeah.
or at least
Well,
an amount of money in there, and then you can decide. What?
May I ask, I think that's related more to the actual budget as opposed to the capital
The
budget?
25, okay.
Yeah, so
Fine.
maybe we
I'm
can
gonna
deal with
move
that
that.
first.
That's
and then-
okay.
But your
Yeah.
question is, yes, we can certainly answer that question.
Because I liked the way the capital budget looked going out. I like what I saw, the information that we got. So maybe the questions that I have are more related to just this year's budget, although it will impact the whole, it might.
Right, I don't disagree with you. I think in terms of the personnel, I think the discussion in number 8, new number agenda, I believe,
Okay,
makes more sense. And the 2025 to 2029 is really trying to deal with hardware, materials,
Understand.
things we have to buy. And we did our best to anticipate that, to kind of guide this. And I think this might be the first time that you've had that. I hope it's helpful.
yeah. It was helpful to me.
Yep, certainly.
Sure was.
Ready to make a motion on that? Unless
Yeah.
you want, yeah.
No, I'm ready.
I'll make a motion to accept the 2025 to 2029 capital budget as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we passed our capital budget, 2025 to 2029.
First time ever.
I know, this is
Or in a
great.
long time.
It's
a long time.
It's a capital experience.
Yeah, I appreciate the work that went into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
did, you guys, the presentation was wonderful, it really
Great,
did
I'm
explain
glad.
it.
And as I say, I think generally, any organization that has to buy big things needs to try and anticipate this and get it on the table for you well in advance. So, yeah, that's That's the purpose, because these bucket trucks are not your usual go to the used car dealer
No.
purchases.
Okay, so let's move on to line number 8, 2025 budget.
I guess I will just say that from the presentation we made and the assumptions we made, I mean, the big things that you have under your control are the proposed position that we talked about for Brett's shop, which we might be able to find a different way to deal with. The change in the benefits to align with the union contract. Not too many, but here's, I think, a thing that we need to think about, and you need to tell me if you want to do it. The union folks started, as part of their agreement, paying 1% on their medical insurance and also on their Beamer's retirement thing. You have to think about whether you want to extend that to their staff or whether we should just leave it alone for now. It's not a lot, but it's a trend in the sense that this is the first time we've asked employees to contribute. As a policy, should decide, at some point, should decide to what extent you think employees should contribute to the benefits.
Have you gotten any feedback from employees?
You know, it's been a little confusing with the union folks because they had several things that impacted them. First, they did get a pay raise, several of them, because they were eligible for that because of their work moving through the apprentice stuff. But they also, they got an increased boot and clothing allowance. They got, as you say, generally an increased wage, but they got also need to pay union dues and this 1% from each of these two. So I don't know whether they feel better off or the same, or I'm not sure how they feel about it. And Brett, I don't know if you want to weigh in at all. I don't know.
No, I mean, I haven't heard too much about it so far. I mean, they'll wait and see how the changes go.
Yeah. And I guess, like everything else in life, if you're not hearing a lot of stuff coming back at you, then maybe you're in about the right place. That's what I would say about this. But I think not necessarily this budget, but I think we have to think about how to meld these two systems into one.
I mean, typically, if you're not in the union, there's different fluctuations there that
Yeah.
you don't benefit, because the only thing you're going to drive is you're going to find the office staff. If they're going to pay that percentage, they're probably going to join the union too. So.
Yeah, it's going to be a strategy discussion as well. Yeah.
One of the things that, that's confusing to me is when we got the Ludlow Electric Department benefits for 2025. It's not easy to read and understand, so I think at some point we need to talk about that.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'd like to see is what is this everything? Is it a mixture of things? Is it inside, outside, union, non-union?
Yeah, the list I gave you was intended to be everything, and there were only two places where I had to distinguish between the existing staff and the union staff.
Okay.
And that was on the payment, the healthcare benefits and payment to Beamers. Those are the only two places right now that differ. But I'm happy to read. I think, I'm sure we'll get into this more, but I think by next month we'll be talking about personnel policies and positions and
Right.
things like that. And this, I think, benefits
I
is
think we
going to
might
be
have
a
got that
key
resolved.
Okay,
piece of it.
because the policies, personnel policies and that type, haven't been adjusted or updated for what period of time would you say?
I don't know. I'm guessing it looks like a 1970s document.
No, it was
90s.
updated about 3 years ago. We did
Oh,
it.
wow. Okay, well, they did it very,
Okay,
like
I mean, it was
1970.
very similar to the old one. It
Yeah,
wasn't
they
a
did-
big
they-
change.
I was going to say, maybe that's a
Right.
starting place.
Right.
Let's look at,
I am looking at that and starting to edit it for
Okay.
you all. And
it's not ready yet, okay.
But I'm thinking next month it's an important thing to kind of structure all these things, the benefits, the organization, how we're going
Right.
to work forward.
And there's a couple items on here that we can talk about later, or another meeting, is how much is it costing now? What might it cost in the future if we were to continue a couple of these programs?
Yep, yep,
So,
understood.
okay.
I did get clarification by talking with Michael that it's supervisory staff,
Okay,
so it's even just more exclusive than what I
Okay.
had read before. And because it's supervisory staff, we actually don't have any other employees that are on this other than the current one, the retired, sorry, I'm gonna need help.
Rich.
Rich, right, thank you. So, like, because Kim was not a supervisor, even though she had
Right.
more than 20 years. that would not
okay,
count.
yeah, I understand.
Beth, no.
But-
And also Jeff, no, on
Right.
those points.
So, but I do think it's one of a couple of things to think about that could be costly going forward. Not right now,
No,
but,
you're right,
you know,
yeah.
somebody theoretically could come to work here at 25 in a supervisory position, or 30, and in 20 years, that person's only 45. How nice. But if you want to pay insurance for the rest of someone's life,
Yeah.
that, you know, hopefully people live to be 80 and 90.
I know, I've said this in other meetings, your benefits are very generous.
They
compared to
are,
others.
they are, and we want to keep
So-
them that way.
But you may need to assess some of these things, because as we talked about in terms of the sick pay, payout and stuff, you don't want to have liabilities move forward with you in multiple years.
Yep.
And pension funds historically have been that problem, like for the state of Vermont. They don't know where they're getting the money from to pay these. But it's true of pretty much any of these type of benefits that are long-standing and maybe go, as this one would, to the end of somebody's life.
Yeah,
Very unpredictable. Not probably a lot of money, but it's a weird benefit to provide these days, because I think mostly we're trying to provide benefits during your work period. Ensure you, take care of you, but if you leave us, you know, that's kind of,
yeah.
we're not in the stage where we're doing, you know, like corporate pensions anymore, like companies used to when somebody worked with them for 30 years.
And just one other thing real quick is I'd like to see in the budget a position budgeted at least for a first-class lineman. If we can need one, use one, I'd like to see it in there. That's it for me.
Thank you. We can make those revisions, or we can, like, you guys obviously can continue to talk about this. I just am like, if you approve the budget with conditions, including getting back to you on some of these issues, that would be fine. If you want to postpone approving the budget, that's also fine, as long as I have some sort of authorization to, like, pay the bills in the meantime. So, the other big piece that I've mentioned before, but it's the other big kind of factor within your control is my recommendation that we give the staff a 5% increase across the board for inflation as well as kind of bringing salaries a little closer to kind of the standard for the industry.
The non-union staff or the?
Yeah, both, yeah. Yeah, the non-union staff, yeah, primarily.
I'm okay with that. I guess you just threw me with your last comment.
Oh,
in-
which one?
To put it in line with other,
Oh, because I do think that some of our staff have been, when I look at these positions, customer service, accounts receivable, accounts payable,
okay.
accountant, I see this as very, these folks have been working underpaid. Brett has been working kind of underpaid. We kind of fixed the union piece, but Brett found himself on the wrong side of that line. So
Well-
we still have to deal with Brett, but it's.
Good, okay, I didn't want
Yeah.
that to get lost in the,
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
All
So
right,
if you were talking about, I would say that the outside plant workers that are unionized are now being paid a fair wage. Okay? And I hope they're happy because it's pretty generous.
I'll make the motion to approve the 5%.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion moves.
I think I'm mostly, if you feel like operationally it would help you, I think that I'm at a place that I'm comfortable with the budget, with the idea that you're gonna come back to us with some of these things. I do agree with the things Gene mentioned, just coming back with these other positions, budgeting, and then we would treat those as like an amendment or an add-on to the budget that
Yes, yeah.
But the rest of the budget that I think is there, I am comfortable approving with, again, with this new 5% increase. And-
Thank you.
If that's a motion, I'll second
Yeah, moved.
I'll fix it.
it. Okay. Okay.
Right. There's the meeting and then there's what Liz is going to tell us.
Alicia, you feel like you're in the cemetery?
I'm not sure where I am.
And do more, I guess the real question is, do more people talk to you in this meeting than in the cemetery meetings? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I do have this ability to communicate.
To communicate with the
in
people who have gone beyond. Okay, very good.
Okay.
So all in favor to pass the budget for 2025?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, budget passed.
Just for an informational for you guys, our system is capable of carrying multiple versions of a budget. So if you change something later on, I can
Yep.
upload that to the system, no problem.
Okay, excellent, thank you, Michael. Okay, let's move on to number 9, M&T stock sales.
Yeah, so this is an odd thing that I, kind of came across when I looked at the last year's audit. I'm like, why do we own private stock in a bank? And I don't even know the answer to that. I know it goes back through the many iterations of the different ownerships of the banks over the years. But it's about, it's 150 shares, about $25,000. It's not a lot, but it's something I felt like we should kind of get off our books. So I'm happy to answer questions from you about like why I think that is the right thing to do. But it's up to, it's up to you. It's not a lot of money, but it's like public entity owning a private stock, and we do business with that banks. You would think this would help us, but it really hasn't. So I don't know.
Yeah, I thought you were going to come in with like a offer we couldn't refuse.
Oh no, I can't. It's just
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before. I'm comfortable selling it. Are we able to? I think before.
yeah, we
we've had
have a
some
mechanism. The people that are holding it, I believe, can sell it for us.
Sell it through CompuShare.
issues. Yeah, now through the broker that we
Yeah,
are.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we sell the M&T stock.
I don't know that much about selling. I just wouldn't want us to lose any money in this sale, which I can't imagine we would, but I'll second that
Right, we'll get market
motion.
value for it.
Okay.
And then we won't, should it ever go down in value, we won't lose that money.
Okay, understand, okay.
If it goes
And
up.
it would go in the general fund, so to speak?
Yeah, we would put that into our, like, operating,
Still technical.
Okay.
accounts, and then,
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So, you know, right now it's selling higher than what we have it on the books for.
Good,
So we will be
good to
shutting
know.
up.
Sell it
that's
tomorrow.
true, that's true, I didn't mention that, for years, you've been putting this in the audit as a set amount, which doesn't follow the stock
Yeah.
market, but now, when we sell it, we will get the stock market's
And
value.
by selling that doesn't affect, you know,
No.
because M&T, don't they waive our fees or,
Not
Kind
that
of
I,
was what we were
not that I
told,
can
right?
see that much.
They waive about $600 a month in fees for us, and that's because we have so much money in this Vermont pool. We're part of a Vermont pool, and we get all of our fees waived because we have so much money in that pool.
Not because
So
we
not related
have,
to a stock.
not because we have stock.
No, that has nothing to
Okay,
do with that.
go ahead,
Okay.
sell it.
Yeah, sell it then.
yeah. So,
Okay.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's sell the M&T stocks.
That one.
Sorry.
No, I was gonna, it's
To
not
put
me.
the code in order to.
Dismiss it along.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll move on to number 10, the safety audit report and discussions. Are you gonna,
I have, let me introduce to you Pat Lafferty.
Pat Laverty.
Laverty, thank you, sorry. He, with a team of a couple of other people, did this audit, looked through our systems, did this. I basically, we all got the report at about 6 o'clock last night. I think most of us have read it. And the public who's here, if you want a copy of it, you're welcome to it. But I think for my purposes, I would like you all to just be able to discuss this with Pat. And I don't know how Brett and I talked earlier in the day. I think he probably has some questions and discussions.
I think it should go into executive session, not be open session.
And can I just add that to do that, I would just say, I think you have the ability to do that. It might be appropriate. I think all you have to acknowledge here in open session is that you contracted with these people to do this work. They've done the work. They've reported back to you. At some point, this report, you know, when you feel it's not at a disadvantage to the village to do so, needs to be a public document at some point.
Well, it is anyways.
Well,
Once
it is
once
right
it's
now.
posted, it already is right
Yeah,
now.
I mean, if
Yeah.
anybody can come in and grab it, then we should probably post it
Yeah,
on
I
the
guess it
website
probably
immediately.
is. That's a good point. All right,
Yeah.
so sorry, I'm gonna just like say, that's, my recommendation is that you hear a version of this from the consultant, and then you guys can all ask him questions.
so more or less give us an overview of, you know, what is
Yeah.
the findings.
Yeah.
And then if we choose, we can,
There are some aspects that may go into executive session.
Exactly, I
discuss.
think
I
that's
wouldn't
true.
discuss, I wouldn't be discussing this in open session. I don't think it's
So
right.
you want to go into executive session right now, and if you guys agree with that, you have to decide who's going to be allowed.
Yeah, I don't think it's right to go into executive session because it's a public document, so I think receiving the document and the initial findings are already a public proceeding. I think any questions, I suppose questions that we there's maybe some questions that I can think of that might be executive session, but I don't think the initial report should be executive session. My own opinion.
What are the lawyers, can I ask for your opinion on?
So it's, try to draw the right line. It is a public document. I think if you're discussing the public documents, that has to be an open session. If you're going to be discussing what to do about the documents, and it involves personnel, for example, or it involves contracts, or requiring legal advice, that type of, that you can go into executive session for. But overall, the general discussion of the document is a public document, so that has to be an open session.
And I would also add, any questions or discussion about risk or liability also should be an executive session.
No.
So I think hearing a presentation, and then we can go slowly and help say, like, we're now going to go into executive session for these reasons and talk about those and then come back out, or...
So you have to just understand my promise to Lisha, which is that all executive sessions will be at the end of the meeting, so she doesn't need to stick around. So I don't think, I know that's kind of silly, but I think we can accommodate that, right?
Yeah.
It's not silly that she wants to do it. It's kind of silly that I'm trying to make that a policy. But
I think the way that you handle that is when you feel like you've talked about the things that are public, the board may have to talk among themselves publicly about whether you anticipate action to come out of anything after exec. You either have to take action and excuse your note taker, or someone is going to have to take notes when you come back if you're going to take
Right.
action.
Yeah,
And we've
that's
done
fine.
that.
We don't mind that.
we have done
The other
that.
side of that.
My responsibility.
Right.
I'll come to your house later and deliver
So,
the extra
Actually,
notes.
my heat mats are off.
Your heat mats are off.
So, so that would put it pretty much at the end of the meeting anyway, so I
Well,
don't
I
think
think,
that's.
I think, it sounds like what I'm hearing from those guys is that you'll get some sort of introduction. You get the report, and then if it involves personnel and or liability or the other things, then you need to go into executive session. There's nothing you really need to do with this report, truthfully, but you can.
Jay?
This is the report?
Yeah,
Yes.
My question is, at what point does this become a public document?
it is now, I think. You have it.
Now.
We're going to be putting it up on the website tomorrow.
Anybody that has it.
Right.
No, I mean, anybody can walk in here and grab it. I think it should go on the website.
No, I'm just asking you,
It's
Right.
possible, yeah.
you guys did the report,
Yes.
so you submitted it to
We submitted it to the legal counsel.
council,
Yes.
and then council submitted it to the board, and the board just got it
Last night at 6
last
p.m.
night.
we received it.
So at what point do you decide it becomes a public document?
There-
I think it is now, because
It is
we're in
now.
an open meeting.
Everything is
It's
a
on the
public
agenda.
document until it's protected. So if you were to ask for it and they had any reason to think it's protected, we would do an analysis to see if there's any part of it that's exempted. And I think at this point, it's a public document. Doesn't mean you have to post it, but it does mean that you make it available to people if they ask.
But wouldn't that be at the board's discretion? I mean, my experience of being on the board, if it's been submitted to the board looks at it, but at some point during the review, then they decide, okay, we have to make this public.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. See, that shows you how old I am.
That's okay. I just did a presentation on it earlier. I handed you the handout. No, it's a public document, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So technically, if anybody requested it, we have to give it, we don't have to post it. I mean, personally, I'm still probably more in the position of posting it than not, just because I think it is, I don't know, I think that's where I would err on the side of posting instead of waiting for individual requests.
You guys don't have to take action at the moment. You can just talk about it
Yeah,
if you want.
yeah.
Or, you
Fair
know,
enough.
I would talk about it, maybe understand what you're taking action on.
I guess, yeah.
So Pat,
Pat, you just gotta give them the give them the history and introduce yourself for the
Yeah.
company and start the report.
in fact, you can take that. That's fine.
Yeah, you ready to run for office?
He's just moving up the chair.
I'm just gonna move right up here. You can continue. I'm not gonna bring yours to Chris.
I already did this.
So, good evening, everybody. My name is Pat Laverty with GML Utility Services Cooperative. We're a joint action agency that was formed actually by 3 municipal light departments in Massachusetts. So we offer a bunch of different services, a bunch of different services that municipal light plants either don't have the resources to do by themselves, or are too busy to do for themselves, or don't know that they need to do. So my background, I worked for 2 different light departments in Massachusetts before joining GML full-time. So obviously you know that we were hired to put together this report. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read it. We just wrote the report based on our observations for our 3 days up here. So that's kind of a little bit about us. One of my colleagues that came up here for the 3 days we were here was going to come tonight, but he actually came down with the flu over the weekend, so he couldn't make it.
We appreciate him staying home.
Yeah.
So
I think I saw him on the slopes.
he was pretty bummed. He was looking forward to coming. So
How long have you guys been in business?
GML's been around since 2022, but all of our employees, we brought 75 years of experience up here for those 3 days between the 3 of us. So yeah, we've been around the industry for a long time.
Similar, it almost sounds similar to Vepsa in ways.
Very similar. Yep. Yeah. So VEPS is obviously the Vermont Joint Action Agency. Down in Massachusetts, you've got MWIC and E&E and GML. We focus more on less power supply and VEPS is obviously huge power supply and things of that nature. We're more operationally focused. So like my background as an engineer, I was an operations manager engineer for 10 plus years. So we have within our company we've got different skill sets.
The 2 other gentlemen that came, maybe you want to tell them their experience.
Yes. So I kind of wrote it in the methodology. But, between the 3 of us that came up here, my background is more in management, engineering, operations. We had another gentleman with 30 plus years who worked his way up from an apprentice lineman all the way to line superintendent. The 3rd gentleman started as an apprentice lineman, was a line worker for 6 or 7 years, then he moved over to metering substation, customer service, tech manager. So we kind of have a well-rounded team, basically, that put together this report to try to look at things from all different angles and all different perspectives. So I can kind of highlight some of the key findings.
How many audits have you done for municipals our size, roughly?
We've done a handful. Everyone's a little bit different.
Size.
So yeah, it's definitely something that it's kind of right in our wheelhouse.
The majority of audits you do are for this kind of size or much bigger?
No, this size, yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think.
Others in Vermont?
We've only worked for one other Vermont utility. So most of our customer base is in Massachusetts.
Yep.
So yeah, really, I can kind of highlight some of the key findings, and obviously, please chime in if you have questions, that you want to get off your chest right away. One of the most interesting dynamics that we found was just how there's 2 employees that report to the board, which, in our opinion, created a divide within the department. It's something that we haven't seen, in all the different utilities that we've worked with. Typically, the reporting structure that we see is we usually see general manager and then different department heads underneath that general manager, with the general manager reporting to having full control of the department. That was a unique reporting structure that we saw here. And I will say that throughout the 3 days here, all of the employees present that we talked to were very forthcoming, very approachable, very welcoming to all three of us. It was, you could tell the pride that they had to work for the community and to be part of the department. So that was something, very, very noticeable early on from the top down. Everybody was very, very open and accepting of us being there. One of the things when we talked with each employee, we made it known that we're not, we're not out to write some sort of disciplinary report. That's not what we were hired to do. Those weren't our intentions. Sometimes when we've done these, that people get in their mind that, hey, these guys are coming in and they're after me. And we tried to make it very clear that we're here to observe and make recommendations based on our observations. There's a lot of good things we saw, and then definitely some things that we would recommend making improvements on. The reporting structure was certainly one. And then one of the key things that struck me is that none of the employees knew the actual progression. They couldn't explain, how you progress from an apprentice to people call them different things, apprentice to third class to second class to first class lineman. It's very typical in the industry that every 6 months you have a step progression, or every time you can complete X, Y, and Z task, you have a step progression. Nobody could describe that, which was something that was a little bit left us scratching our heads. So that's something. Then there also there was another key takeaway is between the electrician position and the superintendent position, there didn't seem to be very clearly defined who does what. We kind of left with more questions than answers, I guess. So that's kind of high level. Just going through some of my notes here. The recent Vermont OSHA violation got brought up by several employees, and in talking about that, we learned that there was no switching procedures or lockout tagout procedures in place. That was something that we noticed that we would highly recommend implementing.
So those lockout tagout procedures, we have classes and everybody's aware of how to lock out and tag out what they're doing. I've got NEPA certifications. There was also the APPA safety manual. NEPA did a 2-day class. I've got everybody and they've signed off on it. That was never brought to me when you guys interviewed me.
Yeah, that nobody could describe.
I mean, they all signed off on it. They signed the document, went through the class of the book. They all have the book.
Yeah.
Switching and tagging, I've got documentation from NEPA stating that they sit through the class once a year for lockout, tagout, and switching orders. We've got a whole book for switching orders, substation switching orders. I've got a book right there that's got every step.
Okay.
Gives you the system diagram and each substation on what process you need to do to shut it down, swap it out.
That could be more concerning if you have all that and none of them.
Oh, they're open. I mean, the younger ones are. I mean, you got 3 guys there that, One hasn't been there, two of them that have been there just over a year, and then the other one's been 2. I mean, Jeff's been there 20. He's well aware of all of that stuff.
Yeah, we talked with all four line workers, and none of them.
I mean, they're livid with the way you guys wrote this report. Livid. And if I don't lose employees over this, I'll be some surprised.
So the report was never meant to speak any sort of ill will or anything towards any of the employees.
I mean, as a selectman and as a chair of selectmen, this would have never come across our selectmen's board. I mean, this would have been held in management. This wouldn't be out in the public hearing like this. And I can't believe the attorneys allowed it.
Yeah, the report just solely reflects the conversations we had with the staff.
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like some of these things that you brought up are things that we've highlighted already in our time. Well, most of this board is relatively new. Shannon's been here the longest, but she's still been here for a year.
Not even, yeah.
Not even a year yet. I've been on this board for about 6 months, 7 months, and Gene is about the same timeline. And that's sort of the reason, one of the reasons that we did bring you in was because we feel like we don't have the experience to really review. We don't know what we don't know. And so I do appreciate some of the report, some of the things that I felt like we identified pretty early on, just the no job descriptions and the kind of just having a little more formality to some of the organizational structure.
And they're all things that are correctable
Yeah.
and actionable.
Some of those things are things we've already put into motion.
We feel like we've started
we
to
have,
address,
you know,
yeah.
a draft of job descriptions, right, and
Yep.
all the.
Ron, I don't know if you can see him.
Oh, gone.
Just wanted to provide, picking up on what Logan was saying, just some context in that when Sarah and I were first hired, no one really knew what was going on. There was a lot of dissension within the organization. The board was brand new. There were allegations there were lots of safety issues. There were allegations that no one knows what the budget is. And I think we've made a lot of progress. But with the safety issues, because you're a public entity and because you're responsible for employees and public safety, you undertook this, neutral third party to come in and perform a safety audit. And the purpose of this is not to point fingers, it's not to cast blame, it's to move forward. And I understand that people can get upset because it bodes change. But this is not a pointing fingers, it's not a blame game. This is to help the department and the board move forward and make sure that the board and the company, the department are all doing their jobs and doing their jobs as best as possible. I just wanted to provide that context, for also being new, having been hired by you guys over the summer or late summer, and coming into this. At least that's my perspective. And I don't know if Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I were looking at this, I would say what in here is important and why is it important, and then begin to identify what can be changed, what needs to be changed, how will the changes impact either employee safety, public safety. I mean, I think both of those things are important, but having a better understanding, because I don't know, I was not an expert to begin with, I'm no more of an expert than you on what this means and how to digest it and what to do with it. So that's why I wanted to make sure that, Pat's here and that you have dialogue. If there are pieces that are missing from this, I think, that's important. But to know why things made it into the report and why, if there's any priority to it, I mean, those are the things that I would wonder. But I think what I feel like a few months ago, everyone was saying things are really unsafe. And we didn't know whether or not that was true. And I think now we have information, and I don't think it's sky is falling. But I think if you have action items, and Pat wants to say, here's some items for improvement, and describe why they need to be, what measures the board can do, or what measures, management can do, that's what I would say your responsibility is to make sure that if there are things to be done, you're assigning the tasks that need to be done to get the work done.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly things that can be done in the immediate future, in the long term, and so on and so forth. But I think one of the bigger ticket items is when we were talking with the operations staff versus the business staff, it was almost like we were talking to two different companies, two different organizations. There was such a divide between what the people in the office were saying and what the people in the operations were saying. It wasn't like it was one department, which I think could be addressed if the reporting structure was.
I feel like it would have been good for the board to have been able to look at this and just beforehand, and it's very explicit, let's say, and it's a small town. Whether you're on the board or not, you know the employees, because the electric light department is a very well thought of organization in this town. So I think this report is something I personally would have liked the board to have a chance to look at it and decide how to fix the things that you brought up, and maybe have it presented that way. This is what we know, this is how we want to fix it. But thank you for your presentation. Like I said, to the agenda and it was already out there.
I feel like I need to apologize then to you for, I felt like it was important for everybody to see this at the same time. Brett and I included. I also felt like this was not something that should be hanging around out in the public for 2 weeks before you all got a chance to hear about it and discuss it. So to the extent that was a mistake in strategy, I'll take that responsibility.
Yes,
Well, you don't have to. I just wanted to express how I personally felt about it.
Just wanted to clarify an aspect of public records, and Sarah, but you don't decide whether something's public or not.
Understood.
Under the statute, under the Public Records Act, everything's public unless it falls into one of a number of very narrow exceptions. And that's what determines whether it's public or not. And this report, as it stands, doesn't fall within those exceptions. If something is confidential under the Public Records Act, you can make a decision to make it public anyways, but you can't decide to say this is not public. That's set by statute. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, and I think-
There's no decision here.
Yeah.
It's set by the statute.
Right.
But I do think that we shouldn't close up the presentation yet, because I think to Jean's point, if there are things that need to be, like, I don't know that you've said why these things are important. So if the community is gonna ask questions, I think maybe you may want to be able to answer, like, you either agree with it or you don't agree with it, or you heard why it was important. So I don't know if that helps you, Jean, with thinking about, because your point is valid. People are going to look at this and only see it for the words on the paper. And what could come out of, a meeting might be some, response to it, or some action that we're taking it at, face value. We're assessing, we're digging in more. You have facts to respond to, but I definitely think that you can process this and also be able to tell people in the public and give them reasonable assurances about the magnitude of each of your, how important are some of the things that went on here, and whether people should, or employees should feel afraid or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you go through towards the end on page 7, the recommendations we outlined. So revised department reporting and organization structure, we kind of hit on that. By having one person that as, I guess, the decision maker, it streamlines any sort of need to have if there's a difference in opinion or whatnot, that kind of speaks for itself in terms of who's the decision maker. Develop and enforce safety and training programs. So this is a big one when it comes to procedures, switching orders, things of that nature. I know, Brett, I know you just said you have switching orders, but I guess I would try to come up with a system in place that makes sure that the linemen know that you have them and how to use them. There's a lot of other procedures, grounding, lockout, tag out. Those are all key procedures that really nobody could speak of when we ask them.
Are those written, are those in a electrical code somewhere that these folks can look at?
So they're all specific. So what a lot of utilities will do is they'll have one person write a switching order, and then one or two others sign off on it. And switching order is really just to control hazardous electricity, right? So,
but there's not a procedure for how best to do this that we could.
There's general guidelines.
There's a switching order for switching Commonwealth. If we were to kill Commonwealth, it tells you step by step of how to do it.
Cool. Okay.
Well, if you were to kill the transformer that feeds Shaw's, so typically, would be at pole 4 Main Street.
Then you might have to handwrite one out.
Exactly, yeah. In the policy, it should be who can write it out. Can an apprentice write it out? Probably not. Can a first-class lineman write it out? Probably. Who can sign off on it? Can the superintendent? Probably. Should the apprentice lineman sign off on it? No. So it's the policy will govern who can write it, who can sign off on it, who can act on it, that type of thing. And then the switching order itself is going to be specific to whatever scenario you're facing in the field, whether it be a trouble call at 2 o'clock in the morning or scheduled work on a Tuesday afternoon. And that switching order should be at pole 2 Main Street, verify that the 3 cutout doors are closed. And go on and so forth. Step 1, on the primary side of the transformer, open up the load break switch if you use them. Step 2, pull the elbows. Step 3, whatever the order might be for the lineman to partake in, and that's something that's pretty standard. that nobody could talk about.
Is this, I mean, now with this new, with our new NESC GIS system, is this, I mean, in theory, could these switching orders be built into that in places and approval processes and?
There's a lot of different things in terms of purchase orders and stuff, but not the actual work orders. I don't think those.
I believe the app suite does have the functionality for approval of switching orders through, not through the scheduler, but through the, there's a piece of it, but I'll get more information on that, whether it can be part of the app suite.
I would be curious about that. I know other towns that are.
The app,
App suite.
SUITE.
Suite, yeah.
App suite.
I work in a lot of other towns that do use GIS systems, obviously not the one that we use here, but GIS systems for like highway departments, and that all their task lists, all their work orders, everything runs through that.
Interesting.
And they get equipment lists, they know what equipment they need to roll on with a job, they know what procedures, what tasks are expected. And so that's where I just wonder, I know how advanced this GIS system is otherwise, and I wonder if there's some functionality in there that would allow that there is a,
I'll
a switching order that needs to be followed and signed off on.
Get back to you.
Yeah, and the criticality of a switching order is really because you're either letting electricity flow or stopping it, and in order to do that, you should think through the steps you're going to take so that you if you don't have something written down, you're not following the right sequence, you could skip a step. Somebody could think that a transformer is de-energized and make contact with an energized component and have an accident.
But you do have that here, right? That is done.
That's for the substations. There is times that we have to manually write them out because there's certain applications. We've got cutouts here on Main Street. If we had a fire on Main Street and we wanted to open up and kill a section, open 3 cutouts here and open 3 cutouts on the other end. So you'd have to write a switching order for that. And you'd have to tag it.
The third recommendation, improve communication and coordination. This kind of ties back into that disconnect between the business office and the operations director we're talking about.
Can I ask, not you a question, but can I interrupt this to ask you guys a question? You're all here. You've been here for decades. Some of you for generations, although you don't look a day older than like 1004. No, I'm just kidding. So, but you all have grown up together and worked together. And I guess, has it always been that the outside plant, like under the Howards, was kind of just like, let's go build this thing and do it and get it done? And the other office stuff was completely separate? Or has that degraded over time? Because that's what I'm trying to, truthfully, I'm trying to rebuild that. And I feel like we have done some success in that, but there's more to do. Yeah, but I just wonder, like, can you put it in perspective for me a little better?
I mean, you're the one to ask about that, but from what
Yeah.
I've seen many years, is that there has always been
There's
a
always been the
disconnect in
separation.
between
How
the
do
two.
you feel about that?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. The outside, Howard pretty much, he ran the show.
Jack.
Yeah.
Howard and Jack. Jack was in the, you really have to go back to Jack and Howard to.
Okay, so the reality is a utility used to be able to be run by having people climb poles and build things. And that's what happened. And there's just so much more now. I can't tell you like how, with the regulatory function, the rate cases, the rate design, the changes in policy. There's so much more. And I think this is just growing pains, truthfully, as I've observed this since September. You have good people here, excellent people here. You have an excellent system. right? I mean, it's amazing. I have not heard of like, other than some breaker or something occurred. Fuse, thank you, fuse.
Some fuse.
Yep, I have not heard of like any downtime. It's remarkable, and you should all be very proud of that.
Absolutely.
I think the key is like, let's see if what we can do to make the system better, make this coordination better, because I do think it's important. It's important for the office staff to understand what the outside plant people do. So they know that somebody's out there at -4 degrees this morning trying to like figure out how to fix something on a transformer or get the burnt squirrel off of it. I don't know. And vice versa is true, right? I think it's really important for your team to understand what billing does, what the folks do for customer service, what they are doing for, applying for whatever, grants, new systems, working with our major customers, figuring out what, regulations we need to be prepared for, adjust to, how we're going to get power. I mean, we have, until very recently, Ludlow buys all its power from outside its system. There's no real, I mean, we now have a solar project, we're getting a new solar project, we're gonna do perhaps the batteries, that's still a work in progress. But you all can shape this as to how you want the energy future of Ludlow to be. That's what the board is here for and good at, and we're gonna try and implement that to the best of our abilities.
And I think there's been a good start at it.
I feel like we've made, I've gotten a ton of
changes,
cooperation
Yeah.
in this process. I have. So it's not a personality thing. You have a very good system. You have a very reliable system. You have good employees that are working for you to try and do this work. And they know what they're doing. We just need this integrated fabric that can make people feel like they're part of one organization and support each other across the board. And that's what a good manager does. I feel like that's what I was kind of brought in to try and help with. I feel like we have made progress and learned a lot about, I've learned a lot about Ludlow Electric that I would never come in here, I would have never come in here and said to you, oh, well, I can fix this in 5 minutes. Sorry to use that. No, I listened, I learned from people. I didn't try and respond to what my head was telling me until I learned kind of what was going on. And I do want to compliment you all that this is a very strong and sustainable utility. Probably better than I've seen in a lot of different places. There's a disconnect right now in terms of expenses versus revenue, but that's fixable, and we'll talk about that over the summer. You need good leadership, so I'll be disappearing and somebody else will be appearing, and you can then compare and be really grateful that I left. But I think it does need to be brought into kind of the current atmosphere of there are regulations, there are opportunities, there are laws. We need to deal with them. There's OSHA, there's VOSHA, there's how to schedule what people are going to do the next day. It doesn't need to be painful and entirely we're just going to look at spreadsheets all day and not talk to each other. But You
Just
do
sit in
need,
safety classes every day, so we don't get nothing done.
yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, you gotta balance, exactly. I mean, that's the balance, right? It's like, okay, how much am I gonna torture you in a staff meeting? You've been very gracious about coming in for Mondays. We get it done in about a half hour, but, I don't actually know what I'm keeping you from by asking you to do that. But I'm glad you have done it. That's part of the connection here.
Yeah, communicate.
All right.
And I think it's better than it used to be.
Oh, yeah.
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 I wonder what other, and so, I mean, it seems like one of the things we keep coming back to is just this communication, collaboration, and really try to not have divide between office and,
Right.
and maybe we should even just stop saying office and plant, because it just creates more divide, just identifying it that way.
Yeah.
But I wonder, I mean, literally, like, are we, I don't mean to be flippant, but are we talking about, like, should we just have picnics, or should we do lunch on
No, we
Wednesdays?
should.
Like,
You know what?
is
You're
that
exactly
something that
right.
helps?
I think the previous management is really what's spread the freaking
Started
departments
that
apart.
kind of, really
Yeah.
drove a wedge in
And
it.
then, Howard was set that, when Howard was here, kind of put a separation there
He
too.
ran his own
between
show.
young Howard and old Howard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they were like on the defensive, like,
Right.
these people are crazy. Don't deal with them unless you actually have to, and deal with them through me because,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Well, they were pretty much to themselves, so. it
Okay.
wasn't- it was
But I
bad,
think,
I mean, can we get to a point, I guess, I think about, like, my own job now,
yeah,
and we do at least once a month, usually twice a month, my employer pays for lunch, and we all just sit down and eat lunch, and it's like an hour on a Wednesday.
yeah.
Is that something, I feel like that might be the kind of thing that could really help in the situation.
It might
Is
not
there
hurt
space?
because the younger ones, there's a lot of them that don't know who
Yeah.
is.
And just knowing who
That's
signs your
I think
checks
that's a
and
really
knowing
good
people that do
idea. I
your.
mean, I started even just the staff meetings on Monday and then realizing, like, Brett, come if you can, and he has been coming to those, but there's not an equivalent on the other side, and
Everything
frankly,
else,
yeah, I would love to do like, bring a barbecue thing on a stove in the backyard of the thing. I don't want to do it today.
I have to say that when I first got on the board, and even up until recently, I try to stop in the office and, just meet the people so that, or I already know them. But anyways, it's not a real, you don't get a really good feeling. So you gotta, think about it if you want to go back and do it again and not feel good. So it's been hard. The other thing is when you do go there to see what people are doing, say hi, can I, how can I help? There's not even a place to sit down.
Yeah,
So
think that's
I
true.
picked up on your comments, but we've talked about that, so you were right on with that too.
We used to have a chair outside the door that you could have sat in, but we
Yeah,
had to move
I made that go away. I don't know where it went. Anyways,
well-
you were right on about that. It's not the lack of space, it's the space and how it's used. So
Exactly, that's
I
awesome.
appreciated seeing that in there. I thought, well, glad they saw that.
And I would agree
recognized
with
that.
you, Jean, walking into that office, and nothing against you, Mike or Chris, but when you walk into that office, you're not greeted by any means. It feels very, oh geez, I'm bothering them. So my question to you is, do you think those girls would be willing
Yeah, I think they would
to
love.
do a monthly?
They would love to have more interaction with you all and to feel like they know what you want and that you understand what they're doing. And if they're not doing what you want, that they change that. They would love that. I do feel like conversations have occurred, and you've told me this when you've gone in, and I have been there, and you start to talk with these people, and they are they are scared, they are concerned, they are wanting to be valued, and you all are relatively new, and they know all the history of this that has occurred. Alicia, I'm gonna edit these. More improvements we can make, yes.
We
There
could
are.
do a newsletter, a monthly newsletter
Oh, yeah,
that all
I
the
would love to
employees
do that.
get, and they see what's going on in the outside, they
Is
see
that
what's going on.
Is that gonna be like the letter that was gonna get posted in the paper?
Yeah. Well, we actually decided to hold off on that because of this safety audit. That, we put that on the back burner.
I did
But,
have
you know,
one
we could,
drafted.
but,
Don't-
you know, that, it gives information to the
Yeah.
people, it gives
Yeah.
information to the office people, you know? We could have,
Oh, we need to get back to, I mean, the annual report. I used to love the annual
Oh, yeah,
report. as a-
there's no,
Yeah, we
there was
haven't had one of those.
We haven't
2023.
seen one of those since at
Right.
least 10 years.
Oh, really?
Oh, no, they were done, but
I think they were done.
they started
through
coming later and
2020.
later they used to be out in
I think they
March, and then they just started
Oh, we got
coming
some
like,
ones.
I thought they were done
Yeah,
through
we-
2022.
we had one for 22, we don't have one for 23.
3 or
We had one for
24.
Howard's retirement,
Right.
2022. We haven't done.
So we do
not
need to
the
do it.
2023 one. It just-
That's the kind of thing, yeah, that's.
Sarah?
Yeah.
So while you have Pat here, you've been talking a lot about the operational pieces of it, but I'm wondering, based on some of the initial points that Brett made earlier, if you were to come back hypothetically in 6 months, I'm looking at page 5, because I'm still familiarizing myself with this too. If you were to come back and do like checkup in 6 months, and you were to see a couple things that were different on this list, what are some of the things that you think would be easy to make different? Because maybe they've already been done, or you didn't catch them, or you would like to see them done because you think there's a couple actions that could be taken, a training scheduled, or something or other, and you can check these off the list. Or do you have any on this from the safety perspective? Are there some things here that you feel like 6 months from now could be easily?
So I think a path to a qualified employee would be key. So
What does that mean exactly?
so typically that means an employee that's first aid, CPR certified, pole talk bucket rescue certified, and a qualified groundman to be able to, in the event of an accident, use the lower controls to bring somebody down from the air. Nobody could talk about what deems them qualified,
Okay.
and that'd be a key one.
So I would just want to dig at this a little bit, because my guess is that if I've never been in your shoes, and I've never been in your shoes, but what I'm thinking here is that there may be a situation where you have employees who now when they hear it that way, they're like, oh, of course, I've done first aid, I've done some of these things. But maybe what you might be saying is it needs to be spelled out so that it's not reaching into the recesses of your memory, it's part of your checklist, I wasn't sure if what you were first saying is what I know to be apprenticeship standards that we do have to work on, right? That need to be spelled out. It's part of what IDW has said from the very beginning. When we get past the contract, we're going to revisit the standards, go to the Department of Labor, get them checked out. Is that the sort of stuff you're talking about? Like, make sure there's a written, training plan, people are checked out, and it's organized in a way that
Yes.
has those pieces?
Yes.
As opposed to just, what I'm assuming is Brent's like, yeah, we've done those trainings, but it sounds like it may be more of like a pull it all together.
Almost need to have a little more emphasis to make sure that each employee meets the criteria.
Okay.
Interesting. I mean, I guess Brett didn't even pay me to say this, but I hate these manuals. I mean, right, we're gonna spend all this time writing this stuff. Nobody's gonna read it. How do we train people to do actually the right work and not have to have, I mean, how many of you have looked and read through your owner's manual for your car? It's just not gonna happen.
Well,
And so what do we
I'll
do
just
instead?
say, as formerly running
You
the
have,
apprenticeship
yeah.
program,
Yeah.
I would ask you to ask Chris, or ask Pat if it's important and why.
Good point. Let's rephrase my question.
So here's my take on that. Just because I've never read my owner's manual for my vehicle,
Yeah.
I still know if something happens, I still know how to open the manual and where to find
Gotcha.
where
Okay.
to find
That's
what,
fair.
what and
Good.
everything.
Yeah.
And I think
That's valid.
that's the difference.
Yeah, okay, I appreciate that.
And I think I put a comment on here. A lot of the employees knew of the APPA safety manual, the NESC, things like that. They knew what it was, but couldn't dive into any.
Know about it and know that it's there, and then
Yeah.
when you have these apprentices, as you've gone through and done this,
Right.
to be able to say, you've checked this box, you've
Checked
met
off
this
your hours.
requirement and this criteria, and that almost to the point where you could turn around and teach the first year apprentice what you just learned. And I don't know if that's what you're saying, is it's more about structuring our apprenticeship program so that in the day-to-day doing of the work, you're giving them the training points. Is that?
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth
you're
either.
You're not putting words in my mouth. And so I know that a lot of, some of your apprentices have
Ryan
gone
and
to
Gabe.
Green Mountain Power Apprenticeship.
Ryan's going to Green Mountain
Yeah.
and Gabe's going to
NEPA.
Napa.
Yeah, so I'm familiar with the NEPA program. I'm not familiar with the Green Mountain program, but like the NEPA program, you take home a sheet and you have to, you tied so many knots,
Right.
this month. You built so many underground elbows this month, that type of thing. And in order to sign off on that, it's a lot of on-the-job training and on-the-job work. And obviously at a smaller utility like this, if you're not doing a lot of that work just because of the nature of
Do
what's
such a
going on,
wide variety of stuff.
yeah, it becomes difficult to adequately.
Well, that's
Self-training.
actually the first time I'm not saying this is the first time I've heard that, but it's the first time I'm kind of internalizing that. And so, do you feel like your apprentices are trained, what I would say is slower than
Yeah.
where they would like to go to and how fast they'd like to do this because of the limited kind of variety of
Right.
things we have for them to
I think it's just a wider variety. It's not repetitive.
Yeah,
Repetitive, you learn it faster.
correct.
We might go do a single phase underground, and you'll terminate your elbows and stuff on
Yeah.
one project, and then, okay, next day you're off doing an overhead line. It's not like
Right.
you're
You
doing a
can't-
major three-phase project where you're going 2,000 feet down the road, and you got
Yeah.
4 cabinets, and you're terminating multiple elbows at every cabinet, and
You learn how to do that.
Yeah.
And maybe this is just a suggestion, maybe because of the nature of the work that happens here, maybe it's worth like a day a month dedicating to, hey guys, this is, we're gonna build, even if it's, scrap, or you're wasting elbows, hey, we're gonna build.
well,
elbows
you
today.
found some old stuff we can use it.
There is some stuff that,
Or hey,
We're
we're
gonna
gonna
get
work.
penalized for hanging on to it.
we're gonna do knots today, we're gonna do,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
terminations, whatever it may be. Maybe it's just putting an added emphasis on that.
It shocks me on the pull-top rescue and the controls of the trucks, because we do that. That's a yearly freaking class. It's a yearly class, and
Yeah,
they've all been through it.
again, we just took notes on what information was provided.
So you feel like, even though, Brett is saying these people have gone through this, some of these things, that when you ask them the question of, did you get training on this, or do you know about this, they weren't able to put that together, like what they had learned.
Specifically, the pull top and the bucket rescue, 3 out of the 4 linemen answered yes. One couldn't answer.
Okay.
Yeah, really, the job descriptions too, duties, I guess.
Which has been being drafted for a while. We've been working
Right,
on that.
we've been,
Yeah, we
It's
haven't,
a
that's
priority of
what,
ours. That's something we know we're deficient in.
And
that
truthfully,
we're
as
trying to
you know,
address.
as long as we're on this topic right now, I feel like February, not that I try and put things off, but I feel like February is a really good time to talk about kind of job descriptions, organization structure, and the policies that are in the, kind of working on an amended version of that. And I think I could pull that together in draft form for you in time for a February meeting.
there is
I would
something,
like to do that.
there's something I just want to state quickly. When I first got on the board, prior to you becoming the superintendent, the amount of work that those boys were doing out in the shop was minimal. They were not getting any training whatsoever. From the point that we put you into superintendent, now these guys are out there. They're getting their training. They're doing their elbows, they're doing their knots, they're doing this. Whereas up to 8 months ago, they were sitting in the shop not getting any training whatsoever.
Well,
So
that's very good
to
to
see
hear.
what you've
Yep.
done in this last 6 to 8 months, whatever it's been, has been wildly impressive. They are getting out there. They're much happier. You're holding them and you're teaching them. You're getting them out there to get their hours so that they can move up, and that's noticed. It really has been.
I just want to say one thing about job descriptions, because there's a difference between job descriptions in corporate world or government world. And then there's job descriptions that I would just implore you to remember, it's very different when you're talking about the trades, because your job descriptions, especially for apprentices, are going to have to show their proficiencies. And we don't have, I mean, just to say this is what your duty is, you're a first class apprentice and you do these things, it looks very different. And I think the degree of specificity is what I'm reading into your report is lacking, so that we can hold ourselves accountable to make sure that these folks, when we give them their card, that we can say they have met all of those proficiencies. So I just want, as a board, for you to know it's different to write job descriptions for, you know, the shop, the office, right? The other part of the, I guess we're not referring to them separately anymore. But I would say when you sit down to do job descriptions, I think you should either work with the apprenticeship, work with IBEW, work with Pat, but get them standardized so that a job description here looks like a job description from any other utility, because I think that's what you're looking for when you're going place to place. And it's not hard to do, and you're probably living up to it, but it's just a matter of matching paper to program.
And that's something to, so I've done a lot of mutual aid work in my previous jobs for different utilities, and that's something that when you're responding to a storm on mutual aid, a lot of utilities will ask for job descriptions of who you bring with you to see what qualifications they're getting, basically.
And as I've learned, we've had to sign off on some of those things to say, we've got this training and this is what we can do before we can work with them. So, yeah.
And I hope that the train hasn't really left the station with the, I know the union contract is in place now.
Yep.
And that's actually another thing that when we asked, nobody could really give any answers in terms of when we found out that they were unionizing. So, okay, that's great. What's the step progressions like in the union contract?
Well, it was brand new.
It was, I
brand
mean,
new, and it's
absolutely
the first-
it was
the
within a
first year.
day or two,
Yeah, it
right?
was within
Yeah, no,
a
I
day
think,
or two
yeah, it
when
really
you
was
did
not
that.
signed until like you guys were already here.
Okay.
So that, I do appreciate those points, but I think, yeah, give us a year, we'll come back. But
So hopefully, however the contract's written, the job description will be able to be incorporated.
yeah,
Yeah.
and something I didn't, I did get some job descriptions from IBEW just because I was trying to figure out what was going on. I haven't shared those with you yet, but there's some of them are relevant to your shop.
We have a ton of job descriptions.
Yeah, okay.
And they need to meet, because we went a little bit differently in this contract because we did both number of hours and months.
Yeah.
Mhm.
so
And
kinda
in
split.
Vermont, there's a little bit of a split between whether they do every 6 months, every certain number of hours. And so when we write them, when you said this step, I sort of get that what that means to them is when you finished your last qualification of proficiency on, your 18th month, when you check that box, you say, Brett, here's my hours, here's my proficiency, I get my pay raise. And I'm not sure that's all come together under the same sort of understanding quite yet, but our job descriptions need to specifically
Need to
meet
do
the
that.
contract. at
And
this point.
am I correct in saying that the actual qualifications that make you acceptable or certified as class 1, 2, or 3, that they're all unique to each utility
Employer.
and employer? And if that's the case, folks, we have more work to do because we need to learn from some of the other utilities in the state and pick things that make sense for us.
I think PEPSA has a lot of information on that.
And IBEW is trying to, through their program, they're trying to do it so that it is standardized for all these guys
Yeah.
and girls
Yeah.
and others. So that's, I think the resources are out there, and it
Okay.
has, I will say, it has been on the to-do list. I think from the first day I met with Brett, actually, and when we met with Jeff for that first contract thing, he's like, when this
Okay.
is done, we don't have apprenticeship standards here, we've got to work on it, but don't worry, I'm working on it with all the, he's like, everybody has the same problem, we all
Yeah.
have to update.
Okay.
Right.
Well, that might be then a relatively easy fix in terms of working with IBEW and other utilities, but if it's really utility specific, then we really need that.
Employer specific.
Sorry, employer specific.
Apprenticeships are employer-driven. Your employer is the one that decides
Yeah.
whether or not, according to a contract with your standards.
Okay.
If you meet those standards and you get your pay when you get to the end, your employer has then said you've now graduated to be line worker. You get a card, since it's registered with the Department of Labor, and that card is portable. You can take that over to GMP, you can take it to Illinois, if it's a federally registered program.
Okay.
What those employers will do is say, we're not so sure about the Ludlow program, we're gonna send you to NEPA or whatever and do a training to see how far off they are from our expectations. But generally, they try to be pretty, just with police officers, they're almost all apprenticeship programs too.
All right, that's very helpful for me, thank you.
Yeah,
I
that
don't
is
know about you
interesting.
guys, but that is a slightly different perspective than, where I thought we needed to go to. And if we can train people, the best employees or the happiest employees, and to be able to do a training system that enables them to go elsewhere if they wish to and be competitive, I think that's important, not, sort of like if you go to a bad school and then you can't get a job because you can't speak, I don't know. We gotta make sure that's not the case. And I feel like what I'm hearing here is that there are enough universal standards that we should be able to piece together something that's acceptable to your utility for your employees and make that work.
Actually, Pat, I did have one question on page 4. After the severe incident, the department attempted to address these gaps by acquiring new safety tools and equipment, load buster, cones, etc. These attempts appear to be largely reactionary with little follow-through. What did you mean by that?
So that bullet, the general sense that we felt in talking with everyone is that after that accident, new equipment was purchased, but it was really almost purchased, for lack of a better term, to just check the checkbox.
Just because you had load buster and cones, and I'm like, we've got load busters, we've got plenty of cones.
So in talking with the 4 linemen, they mentioned that they have a load buster, they bought one, but rarely ever use it.
We got freaking 3 of them. There's one on each bucket, and they're tested every year, every February. Okay.
Any other questions?
Well, I'd like to know a little bit more about that. So, because after the severe incident, the department attempted to address these gaps by acquiring new safety tools and equipment. By buying more safety tools and equipment, is that required after a...
No.
No.
They were trying to
So-
cover for motion,
Yeah.
finding stuff that
So-
wasn't compatible or wasn't.
Another example, when we went to the business office, in talking with the employees, everyone was excited to share that they somewhat recently got an AED machine for the office. And so that's great, but when were you trained on how to use it? They all just looked it up.
It's in the bathroom, so when you're in the bathroom.
Well,
you
doesn't
can
it, it just
focus.
talks to you anyway, right?
You're right, it does, but
No, but I'm saying did you get that for an answer?
no, I
Okay.
no.
I do know
It
how
took
to
me a
use
while to
one.
get them.
Yeah. That was an example of how,
Bought all the nice equipment, but nobody knows how to use it.
AEDs are obviously
Yeah.
a critical, piece of equipment to have, but if you don't know how to use it, how good is it?
I'm
So I
pleased
guess
to
maybe
report that we do
my
have
question there was exactly more, so they did get the load buster and they got the cones and they did these things. Why do you feel that there was little follow-through?
Just because things were purchased but then never, not used.
We're not properly trained on how to use.
Correct.
For instance,
I wouldn't say that for the
cones?
cones. I wouldn't say cones.
Oh, I was gonna say, we have to train on cones?
No. No, I wouldn't say that not properly trained on the cones and load buster. That I would just say that the general sense that we received is that items were purchased and then not exactly used.
What's a load buster?
It's for opening cutouts. You hang it up, because if you have too much of a load on a door and you open it, it'll arc and it'll burn. So the load buster goes up and there's an ear on it, you hook on it, you pull it, it's got a shock absorber and it breaks the load for you so you can open the cutout.
Okay.
It's like a reverse taser.
It's like a-
It is if you open it with a big load on.
Yeah.
And the load buster is notoriously a tool that a lot of utilities don't use per se, even though they should be.
Are the boys,
Right,
are
and they can
the,
only use so many times and they have to be,
are they all trained on that?
yeah. Well, the younger ones, all the senior guys are, yes.
So the things I have learned since starting this job, there have been many, but a couple of the details that I did not know. I mean, I've been working in the utility world for like 40 years, so it's crazy that I don't know this, but the testing of this equipment, and it's amazing. Like, you gotta test gloves. You gotta send your
Every 6
gloves
months.
out
6 months.
to be certified, and
Well, you gotta test them every day yourself.
well, right, exactly, and you can decide whether they work or not, or you can tell your next best friend that they didn't work, but no, I'm really, I don't want to, I want to underscore this level of things that have happened now that are different than the way somebody used to run the utility, 40 years ago. You might have said, well, these gloves seem to be working, so I'll keep using them. You don't have to test them. There's not a bureaucracy associated with that. The same is true with some of the other stuff I'm hearing about, and whether a load buster is used or not, is it a new piece of equipment that has come along and we should start integrating because it makes things safer? Or is it something that's been around forever and, people have tried it and they don't like it, so they don't use it? Or, I don't know. So, but I'm learning this stuff. I don't know about the rest of you, but it's interesting.
There's a big expense in just testing everything every year.
Yeah.
Between truck testing, dielectrical testing, cover-up testing, ground testing, your stick testing, the rubber glove testing.
And your personal testing, right? I mean, that's the other thing.
Training every month.
Training every month on one subject or another, and the list is pretty amazing to look at. Then you've got your alcohol and drug testing that each of them randomly are going through. But this stuff is not widely, it's not identified in a place that you can acknowledge what is consistent to do and what isn't, and what we
It's just a matter of tracking and
it is a
staying on
matter
top
of tracking, and then the more you track, the less work you get done.
Yeah.
Well, but Michael, if you're gonna look into seeing with that app, if there's more like work orders and such, that will essentially save us time in
Could help in efficiency.
in efficiency and just knowing every month, okay, this is what I need,
Yeah.
this is what I need, this is, like,
Till your battery's
do it-
dead on your tablet and you can't do it.
what's that? So the
Until your
battery,
battery's dead on your tablet and you can't do it. You gotta handwrite it. You don't know how to do it. Just like kids can't write cursive anymore.
Yeah, this is true. I wonder, so on page 5, you talk about the PPE in short supply, in limited supply, though available, often ordered on an emergency basis. Maybe more for Chris and Brett on that point, just like.
That was more, so in talking with the floor linemen, they more or less mentioned that they want to know a large supply on site if something happened, but if they ever needed something, they could
It could be
buy it.
ordered.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has become increasingly a challenge, and I feel like Brett has done a really good job on this in terms of, when the ability to purchase things went from like 3 months to a year and a half, right? He had to figure out, like, what am I going to need in a year and a half and make sure it's
Balancing point.
on the site.
And not have it expire.
Right, and also, that is amazingly hard.
Yeah.
You've got, as Michael, you can't start depreciating these things until they're in service. You can't get a rate increase on them unless they're in service, known and measurable and active. But you got to order them enough in advance so you have them on site if you need them. And it's a huge expense that is, until it's put into place, is not paying you back.
I see, yeah.
But I think, I will say, I think Brett and his team have done very well at, like, trying to manage that.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions here, or Jean, do you have any?
I don't have any questions, just to comment that maybe to follow up on what you were just talking about. I think that you and Brett could probably go through this and check off the items that have already been addressed or that maybe had been addressed previously, but find a different way to make sure people know where the information is. And so
And
then.
we are doing, we're doing our first aid testing February,
Right,
second
so
February.
that kind of thing,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
then you could maybe bring this back at some point in a smaller version of things that need to be done.
Yes,
And we
I
could
think so.
support you in
Hopefully-
that.
Hopefully the list gets shorter and all.
And we know that some of these things in here that we've already gotten started.
Right.
Will just, yeah,
Right.
which are
So-
already going to be
right.
eliminated.
So
Some
the
of the
new
bigger
first aid kits have tourniquets in them. I just want to make you aware of that. So if Brett and I are talking about it and I don't show up, somebody check and see if the tourniquet is still in the first aid kit.
To Jean's point, given the concerns that initiated this part of the agenda, one thing that could also be a public record is any response for corrective action. So that is also officially provided to you, and there are records of corrective action, things that are taken.
Yep.
And to the extent that that mitigates what your fear was in a small community
Yeah.
about information being disseminated, just be aware that kind of communication or, conversations back with Pat if needed and things like that are all ways to supplement your record.
Yeah, I guess I'm imagining, just like in response to this, maybe from Brett and Chris that we're talking about, we have like this is immediate steps, this is our 6-month,
Yeah.
what we hope to have done, what we hope to have done by next year kind of thing.
Okay. I think we can do that together as best, Yeah. I would like to know where I can get the first aid kits though, at the bottom of page 6 where, you need fire extinguishers, but first aid kids.
First aid kids. First
Yeah,
aid
I
kids.
think that would be, I think they'd be great.
First aid kit.
I think that would be great, and I think we need some, and I would love to be able to do that.
Yeah,
For Halloween.
First aid kits, yeah. Everybody has them.
Skip the babysitting
where was quality
stuff.
control there?
Asleep.
Actually, Chris, Pat, I did get my new up-to-date SC book too.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Cool, okay.
That's a fun read.
Well, I've looked through the old one and trying to see what's changed and what hasn't changed.
Is this a manual?
Didn't hear
One of those,
anything.
like,
It's just your, overhead construction, underground construction, and,
This big.
yeah, it's,
I
Do we
think
or
from
not? I don't know.
college I
I mean, do we
learned,
wanna-
never read a book
I think it's more for
that is
next
so
month.
heavy that when you fall asleep reading it, it hurts you when it falls on you.
yeah.
So,
This one will, it's
Yeah.
a hardcover.
exactly.
That's very specific.
I don't have anything else.
Yeah, I think a lot of this comes back into other discussions that we've talked about, we're probably gonna have next
Right.
month.
I would love
We
to
do
be
talk
able
about-
to start keying that off and working with Brett to figure out what can work and what we need to do.
New positions, succession planning.
Yes,
Or
all
one,
those
two,
things.
three,
I think
four.
that what you two give to us will work.
Just talking about that.
Yeah.
But I think we've talked about that, and that we're gonna, we want to talk about succession planning next month. We want to talk about the positions that are discussed in this,
I agree.
how it fits into the organization. I think that's a next month conversation. I don't see a personal reason for executive session. I don't know if anybody else at the table wants.
I don't see any reason.
So we keep you to the end. This is good.
Yeah. Well, too bad.
Yeah.
It should be supposed to be.
Yeah.
Well,
Any other questions?
Not unless you have any other high points for us that you think we missed or need to cover,
but
or
thank you for making.
I
the
really
trip up.
appreciate you coming down. Really appreciate your work on
It was
this.
great to meet all you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look forward to you coming back and
obviously I gotta go
saying,
back and pound into the guy's head, they need to answer the questions, right?
That's 3/4 of it, evidently.
teaching them.
Yeah.
Before you close this out, not necessarily do with Pat, but it may be important on the record for employees who may be reading this or seeing this, that in the beginning, if you recall, the board sent a note to the employees and asked them to be honest told them that none of this was going to be coming back to bite them, and it might just be important to acknowledge in some way so that they can be reported back and communicated that you appreciated that and that this was for your purposes and that employees should not feel like they are, that this was a critique of them.
Right.
And I don't know if Brett, obviously mentioned that there's some frustration, so I wanted to make sure that you guys had an open communication about that and address that in an appropriate way from an employment perspective.
Yeah, well, and I think they're loyal to you.
Well, that's because I'm upfront and honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the safest thing. If you guys can't get along, you get one that doesn't get along with you, and then you gotta.
Well, I think
that's the
that,
biggest thing, is safety.
I think that is the key. I mean,
They respect your opinion.
I hope that, since I haven't been here that long, right? But I hope that I have been able to portray at least that to the staff and the folks, and I feel like I feel good about working with everybody that I've been exposed to, inside and outside.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is they will never always get along perfectly. It's a little bit like the outside plant and the inside office. It's a little bit like oil and vinegar, but you need both to make a salad dressing.
It is so specifically different.
Yeah, no,
that
yeah,
I understand
absolutely.
where it is hard
Absolutely.
to integrate the two, but yeah. I do want to say something about Kim.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Kim.
She's retiring, or has
Tomorrow.
tomorrow's her last day.
22, right?
22 years.
26 years.
26 years of
God,
service
26.
in the
Well, when you
office,
get that
Ludlow
far, what's
Electric
the other
Department,
pattern
and
Yeah, that's for the four.
yeah. Well, I think it.
The electric department did purchase her. In the past, we've always bought retirees a meter clock or a meter lamp, had an electric meter in it with a nice lamp.
Yeah.
She didn't want that. She didn't feel it fit into her decor. So we bought her
Hard to believe.
a nice wind chime.
Okay.
A very nice wind chime to go on her porch, and it says, "You don't realize how much you've done for people over the years."
Is that the plaque you're?
It's a little different. We ended up
Okay.
going with something useful
Yeah.
as opposed to just a plaque that goes on the wall.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Yes,
that's
we
nice.
were-
And you guys did a dinner with her.
Yes, we did do a dinner.
You did a dinner with her, so I just wanted to put it on the record.
Yes.
This is tomorrow's. her-
26 years,
Yeah.
pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I don't think they've been able
But
to.
talking about working together,
Yeah,
the shop never knew about that.
yeah, see, yeah.
Well,
exactly.
neither did we.
Right,
No, we
I mean,
didn't.
and
Nor
there
did
are
we.
things- No,
Neither
it's
did we.
true.
Lunch. Yeah.
Neither did the
And-
board.
Right,
Yeah.
so,
There may be
We'll-
reason
we'll-
for that, though.
yes, we need to talk about some of those things, because some of those things are choices of the the employee you're trying to celebrate, and
Right.
that
That's true too.
can be an issue, right?
I wonder, just to Sarah's point, I wonder if we want to draft a similar letter, just thanking the employees for what, even in the report, they said was very open conversations with employees, and let them know that, I think the spirit of it, to me, would say that we view this report as, if anything, critical of us, and making sure that we know what steps to take to put all the employees in the position that we want the department to be in. But that we view this as overall positive of the employees that work for us, and, to that extent.
Yeah, it was an informational situation that we
Yeah.
needed, yeah.
Yeah, we needed this report, but we want them to, not view it negatively, which it sounds like maybe there's some opinions forming, and we want to make sure that everybody knows
Well, and that's hard with something like this. We're basically hired you to come in and tell us,
everything we're doing well.
what are we doing wrong? And in a situation with that, it's not your job to tell us what we're doing right. So a report like this is coming off sounding very negative, where it could have been something completely different. Had we had 10 other things wrong, it would have been 10 times worse, right? So this is information, and the
Yeah.
job was done.
Yeah,
to point out the things that we need to address or look at.
Yeah, I just think, I want to stress, and I think, the
Yeah.
letter would help with
Yeah,
that.
I
if we
agree
could
with
write
you
one,
on
just
that, yeah.
So
that
is
it's-
that something you would want me to draft as kind of a first draft for you guys, or is it something you feel like?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, I
trying to
mean,
be
if
a
you're
good
willing
manager.
to.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
Right, you tell me what you need
You
done,
got it.
and I'll do it. Or I'll go to these guys and tell them to draft it. Take
You're
credit.
so good
for-
with words.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that would be really helpful
Okay,
if you want.
so
to.
I will. I have to, I didn't see the original letter, that was before my time, I guess, but I can certainly find it and
Yeah.
mimic kind of,
Yeah, I think the general thought, for me, this is just that this report is for us
right.
to help the department and all the employees feel like they're safe and that we have all the protocols in place. We do all the things necessary to make sure that the department succeeds. And definitely not critical of the employees at all,
Yeah.
just of the
Yeah.
things that we haven't
I
done.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I like
and
that.
I understand. I can do that.
Okay, so I guess we're not going to go into executive session, so any other business? No? Okay. Let's see what time is it.
So we'll move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 6:44.
Thank you all very much.